Hello and welcome. I'm Silvianne, and I'm here with lovely Lizzie Moon, who has graciously agreed to do this with me. We are doing the monthly members call for April, which goes from the new moon lunation in April to the one in May. Generally, these are done live, as you all probably know, with Daniel, but because he's traveling right now en route for the event that we're doing in Ohio for the eclipse, um, we weren't in we weren't able to do it. So I wanted to at least have this recording so we'd have the basic information for you and we'll have the same resources that we usually have. And I really encourage you, if there's, we can't take questions because it's not live, but if you have any comments or questions afterwards, please feel free to put it in the forum and I will try to keep track of that and answer your questions. So yeah, we can start, Lizzie. So this is the Aries new moon monthly members call. It will be the Aries new moon coming up on the 8th. And there we go. So this is the chart for the Aries new moon. And again, you will have all these resources available. They'll be there in your course, in your dashboard, along with the course. So of course, you'd have to be living on a rock to not know that we're having a new moon solar eclipse on the 8th. And I will be talking about that in more detail as we go through. But right now, just to, Lizzie and I were on a call earlier today, and we were talking a lot about this whole concentration of things there's been in Pisces and now moving into Aries. So a lot of people are really feeling that Aries Pisces shift, and not just a shift, but how do they interrelate and how do they commingle? So obviously a very powerful new moon. And to me, what stands out is, of course, you've got the South Node opposing all that in Aries. So it really is about how do we go towards that Aries sovereignty spark and yet take the best of the collaboration and the Libra that's on the other side. So we can go ahead now and we'll get back to this in a minute. So we usually like to go through the movement of the planets this lunation. And you'll see right there, sun, moon, of course, in the same degree, that because we're doing this, April 8th is the new moon, and then May 7th will be the new moon in Taurus next month. So the sun is moving from 19 Aries 24, and remember that number, it will be important later, to 18 Taurus 02. So the sun goes up through about a sign in a month. Moon 19 Aries 24 to 18 Taurus. Mercury is retrograde. It just went retrograde. It's today. It's going retrograde today. Yes. And so it will move as far as 24 Aries retrograde, and then it stations direct April 25th. And then we'll go forward. No, 20. I'm sorry. Let me start over again. Yes, Mercury's at 24. It's stationed direct 425. And then it's going to go at 15 Aries, and it'll arrive at 21 Aries by the new moon in Taurus in May. Venus is in Aries. She's going to she entered Aries April 4th, just before this lunation, and then she'll enter Taurus on the 29th, and she'll get as far as 10 Taurus by May 7th. Mars is 13 Pisces 03, enters Aries April 30th. So you can see they're part of this trend. It's not just the sun and the moon that are going from Aries to Pisces to Aries like they would every year. Well, the sun would every year at this time, and the moon would sometimes during that month. But Venus and Mars aren't always all lined up there, along with some other characters we will talk about in a minute. And then Jupiter is at 19 Taurus, moving to 25 Taurus, and Saturn at 14 Pisces 27. And then if we go to the next slide, it's basically a visual of this. So you can see this is just the 5, personal planets. And so you can see the movement that they're going to make over the course of the month. The inner circle is this new moon, and the outer circle is the one in May. Okay, so the next slide is going to be the disposition of the outer planets, and also, yes. Yeah. Okay, so you know, obviously the outer planet's moving a lot slower. Uranus is only going from 21 Taurus to 22 Taurus. And if you remember from the other slide, um, Jupiter is in Taurus also, and they are going to be meeting up this month. That's one of the big things that's happening. So they are really close now. Neptune's at 28 Pisces, going to 29 Pisces, only a degree. Pluto is at 1 Aquarius 58. It stations retrograde May 2nd, so near the end of this lunation at 02 Aquarius. So you can see we'll only have moved a degree in that, not even a degree, actually just like minutes or something. And then it's going to go back to 02 Aquarius 06 by May 7th. Chiron is 19 Aries 24. Remember, I told you to remember that. That's the exact degree and minute of the sun and the moon at this eclipse. So we're all going to be together. I'd like somebody who is into statistics to do the probability, the possibility of that. I think it's way off the charts. And it moves to 21 Aries 06. So you can see it's still within that range for the whole month. The nodes are in Aries, Libra, North Node, future trajectory for humanity, South Node, kind of our past, where we've come from, work is a polarity. So the cutting edge for where we're going as humanity right now is Aries, with all these planets in Aries. It's like, wow, could it be any more clear? And the nodes generally move backwards. So it's going from 15 Aries 37 to 15 Aries 21 and Libra. Vesta is at 02 Cancer 26, moving to 12 Cancer. Ceres at 17 Capricorn to 21. Pallas is going retrograde during this time. And Juno is already retrograde and is stationing direct on April 21st. And then Aries, you can see Aries hardly moves at all. It's going from 24 Aries to 25. Okay. So then the next one will be just a visual of all of that, those planets. And you can see up there, see how close Jupiter and Uranus are, and you see that they switch places between this new moon and the one coming. So, yeah, and most everything is not moving that much. Okay, so the next slide. So then this is just kind of a disposition of the visible planets. What's going on with the ones that we can go out there and look, because shamanic astrology is really grounded in those mysteries of earth and sky and bringing the two together and what we can view with the naked human eye. Mercury is the closest planet. We'll start with that. Mercury begins the lunation having already turned retrograde on April 1st. When I said today, that's because Lizzie and I are filming this on the 1st. So I'm having a little bit of a time warp problem here. We're not to the new moon yet. By the time you all watch this, that may be true. So it is entering, so in the whole, you know, we do a lot of work with the synodic cycles of the planets, and Mercury is currently in its Sagittarian synodic overstory. And it spends about 115 days there, and it's getting into the last stages here. So when it turns retrograde is when it enters that last stage that we call the synthesis and metamorphosis phase. And it means that it's getting ready to go between us and the sun. So it's a quick, you know, it's a quicker, so it's like that quick change metamorphosis. And when it comes out again, when it goes stations direct, then it will be in Aries. So then that will be an Aries overstory, another Aries signature that we have going on here. And in those synodic cycles, the way that Mercury works, it tends to have several in a row in the same element. So right now we're in the fire element version of Mercury. We've been in Sagittarius. We're in Sagittarius, that, you know, quest for truth and meaning. And it's going to make that when it's going between us and the sun, so we can't see it. So it's like kind of in the underworld from our point of view, and it's going to conjunct the sun on this side of the sun on April 21st at 22 Aries. So again, you can see it's all in that same degrees of Aries, really close to where all this stuff is happening with the eclipse and the new moon. And then Mercury will station direct April 25th, and that's when it begins its new synodic overstory. The last one was about 115 days. They can vary because Mercury has a very erratic orbit. So, And,
I just wanted to quit. This says April 11th. Am I not seeing instead of April 21st?
oh,
But
I'm sorry, you're right. April 11th. You're right.
just wanted to make sure. Okay, good.
Right.
Because
Thank
that's
you very much,
coming up.
Lizzie. Thanks for catching
Yeah,
that.
that's coming
I've
up.
got
Right.
21st on the mind since so much is happening then. Yes, absolutely. So
Right.
it's coming up. Mercury has now, I don't think it's really visible. I mean, it was this past month has been one of the best times to see it for this year in the Northern Hemisphere, but now it's getting just really, really close to the horizon, and it will be disappearing in the underworld. And that's kind of what the marker of this synthesis and metamorphosis phase is. So Venus, in the larger Venus synodic overstory, she reached the somewhat rare 8th moon Venus conjunction. So she makes a series of conjunctions in the morning sky with a new moon, one per month. And there isn't always an 8th one. It's a little less than half the time will there actually be an 8th gate. And her larger synodic overstory is Leo. She's going to reach that 8th gate right before the new moon. This lunation starts on April 7th because she's meeting with the new moon. So of course it's always right before the exact moment of the new moon at 03 Aries 06. And we call this the death by intent gate. That 7th gate that we've been in this past month is like that root chakra, the root chakra gate. And this is like the root chakra, or almost, I've heard some people call it like the earth star chakra, that deepest place where, like that shamanic death where we choose to die. And she's getting very, very close to entering the underworld. She starts this lunation, she's only 15 degrees from the sun. And when she gets to about 10 degrees, we can't see her anymore. And so she's going to enter that exterior underworld on April 27th. And then she'll spend about 60 days ceremonially. We call it 60 days. Sometimes, again, it's a few days more or less, and depending on where you are, what your view is. So it's really a deep time of going inward and dying to what no longer serves us. And this is how the ancients, they didn't know about the outer planets, Pluto, but they had that same Pluto underworld experience built into their understanding of the planets, because they understood that when the planet was invisible to us, it was going through an underworld phase. And then Mars isn't been in the morning sky. He and Venus were together in the morning sky, but they passed each other, and now she's going down in the underworld where he's ascending. So he's beginning to get a little bit brighter and a little bit more visible. And he's going to continue to go up and up and up in the morning sky until he reaches opposition, all year until January of next year. During this lunation, he goes from 35 degrees to 40 degrees. So he's getting about 5 degrees higher in the sky. And he continues to be in phase 4, which began at the beginning of this year, of his whole larger synodic overstory until July 20th, when he enters Gemini. But this is the rebirth and growth phase of wisdom. He makes a conjunction each month with the moon, and this lunation, he's going to make the 5th conjunction with the moon on May 4th at 03 Aries 25. Aries again. Mars and Saturn will come together low on the horizon in the early morning twilight on April 10th and 11th. And honestly, I live here in the beautiful mountains of Western North Carolina, so I haven't been able to see much of this. When it gets too close to the horizon, between the trees and the rain, I do live in a rainforest. So I can't tell you from my own observation how visible Mars and Saturn are going to be. I mean, do you have any idea, Lizzie? I know you live out there in the desert.
I do, but I have mountains around me too, so I don't quite see the clear horizon. I see it a few minutes later, which
Right.
may or may not show that. So I will let you know, though. I'm making a note right now, April 10th.
That sounds good. And I know on Earth and Sky, they said, with binoculars, but they tend to do that anyway. That doesn't mean it's not visible with the human eye. So all of you out there, you should go, give it a go on April 10th and 11th and see if you can. Mars is going to be the kind of redder one, and he's a little brighter, and Saturn will be real dim, and Saturn's kind of got a yellowish cast to it. And they're at Pisces again, our Pisces Aries thing here.
Well, here it is again, right? Rebirth and growth of wisdom. Fingers crossed. And there's that 3 degrees of Aries again. I mean, not only just Aries, but 3 degrees, just like Venus and the one before.
Exactly.
Cannot make this stuff up.
You can make it up. That's one of my favorite phases.
Okay, are we ready to move to the next
Yeah,
one?
we'll go to the next one. Okay, and then Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter's been in the evening sky. That I have been able to see because it's been high enough and I have somewhat of a view of the western horizon. But it's beginning, so about 30 degrees from the sun, and by the next month's new moon in Taurus, it will have disappeared below the horizon. So I think early May is when it's officially, again, according to Earth and Sky, but you never know. Now it's going to have its conjunction with Uranus on April 20th, followed by, now obviously we're not going to be able to see that. Sometimes you can see Uranus, but we'll know it's there. And this is, again, is one of those really game changer things that only happens. They only come together. I think the last time was, say, 2012 or something, but that wasn't, but the last time they came together in Taurus was, you know, a long,
41.
yeah, exactly. We all knew what was happening then. So,
Yeah.
you know, and it's interesting with all this emphasis of, I was thinking about this Aries, Pisces and all that going on, but then you've got this whole thing happening in Taurus, you know, and really that earthed thing, very different from the air and the water. And yet Uranus is that, you know, it's the cosmic change agent. And Jupiter is about expansion and change. So when they come together, they are really accelerated. I mean, they accelerate.
Yes. Oh, she froze a bit. Hold on, Silvianne, you're frozen a little bit. Uh-huh. So
Earth and groundedness.
here she is. Hold on, you froze just a minute. You
Oh,
froze for
did
just a moment. So we were talking about accelerating when Jupiter comes in and really accelerates.
Yes, Jupiter and Uranus together accelerate each other. So anyway, be watching. You can watch for Jupiter in the evening sky right now, and it's getting closer to the horizon. And it'll be coming up to an approach to the Pleiades. And usually, you know, Pleiades is one of the things I can always reliably find in the sky, and so you'll see them coming together. Saturn begins the lunation about 33 degrees in front of the sun, visible in the morning sky. We talked about that a little bit earlier, Mars and Saturn coming together. So, okay, that does it for disposition of the visitable planets.
Okay.
So this is the, again, you'll have all this in your resources with the call. So this is the first week of the lunation, the first quarter. And yeah, let's see, which of these do we want to talk about? Obviously, we're going to talk about the Aries new moon solar eclipse. So why don't we go to that first, since it's starting off the whole thing and it's the headliner here.
Right.
In a month that's full of lots of sparky things.
So do we want to look at that chart?
Is it the next? Is it there? Is it the
There we
next
go.
one?
Yeah.
So, so you can see. Okay, we've got. Now remember again the reminder that I ran these for Los Angeles just because it's specific time. So don't pay attention to the angles of the chart because those will be different depending on where you are on the Earth. Although it's always interesting to look at it from where you are, but so the sun and the moon obviously together, that's the definition of a new moon, and that's you can't have a solar eclipse. That's why we have a solar eclipse, because they're lining up with the node. So you can see how close the node is there at 15 degrees Aries to the sun and the moon. So that's what, you know, causes an eclipse. And then look at this, Chiron also at 1924 Aries, the exact same minute. So, you know, we've talked a lot about over the last months about Aries. It's hard for me to be objective about this because I have a lot of Aries in my chart, and in some ways I feel like Aries gets a bad rap. You know, Aries is about, it's in that polarity, the resonant polarity. Whenever you have any sign strongly, you always are calling in the other side. They act together in a way. And so it's classic to think of Aries as the self and other polarity, right? But it's interesting, Aries is in the householder cross. It's not a self-interested sign like a healthy self-interest like Taurus or Scorpio or Aquarius. It's more like I see it as that spring shoot that's just that little plant that's just coming up, and it's all about me because it just doesn't know anything else, but it doesn't really know who it is either. And it's learning about who it is by bouncing off of others. So at this time where there's so much Aries going on in the timings and the planets, it's really, and a lot of it really connected with the US chart, which we'll talk about later. It really is striking. It's like having that sense of adventure and self and agency and going forward and healthy leadership. And with Chiron there, it's really looking at the ways in which this is not help. Aries has not been expressed in a healthy way often over the last 6,000 years or so. To me, I really feel deeply, it's that archetype of the sacred warrior defending the cosmic order. But if you've taken the warrior and turned it into a mercenary for hire that's defending, greed, oil interests around the globe, for instance, then you've really done a great disservice to Aries and to the world. And so that is what we have the opportunity and our country on the forefront right now, really, to own up to the mistakes of the past, with that Chiron, and say, how can we be different going forward? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I'm leaning into my Venus and Aries energy as well, and kind of, yes, defending that energy in a way. Because, it's also impulsive, it could be, right? But that's because it works from the intuition, and I'm glad you brought up that term of defending the cosmic order. And the other part that I love about this paradigm is that kind of redefines that if we choose to go from just the warrior fighting for the cause of fighting, like, that's kind of the shadow. I just fight, I'm fighty or angry or whatever. And sometimes in certain circles that's praised in the society, right? So how can we turn that into defender of the cosmic order, and also the sacred warrior for the noble cause, right? The noble cause, not the like you said, cause of greed or resource taking or whatever it is, but just what's a noble cause. And that I'm finding that noble cause can be my own identity. Like the sprout coming through the soil at a point decides, oh, I'm going to be a yellow flower. Well, that cuts off all other possibilities, right? It's not going to be a lemon tree or a purple flower or anything else. It's going to be a yellow flower, and that does, help the leader, rise up into, I know, like, who I am, and I can hold the sword, the shield, whatever, for the community, if that's the cosmic order, for me, for my family, for whatever, if that is, right? I'm getting to choose what that is, yellow flower, purple flower, or whatever was encoded, because it is like we're first coming out, it's kind of like just there. And there's a lot of that there. I love that, we're kind of pointing to the rarity of that lineup there, it seems.
Yeah, and the exactness. I mean, I just don't know the exactness to another planet, Chiron being the exact same minute and degree.
And Mercury having just moved through that point and going to go back over that point and then come back through that point again. So how are we thinking and believing and cognizing, communicating those things we learned at that point?
Exactly. And Eris, of course, you can see in this chart that Eris is almost exactly conjunct Mercury. So we've got the communication function, the mind up there with this. So it really is about sharing this, communicating, collaboration. And, because this is all lined up with the North Node, the Chiron gives it that sense of, okay, looking at the past, the wounding, what is it we want to do differently? And it's also this great opportunity going forward. If all those planets were conjunct with the South Node, you say, yeah, this is really about, boy, composting what has been. But this is really, there is an opportunity of taking this and running with it.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. What else can we say about this chart? You see Saturn and Mars there conjunct. We talked about that. They're going to be, I always think sometimes as astrologers, we think this chart has nothing to do with, this really is a map of the sky. I can pull up my little app when I'm with somebody on the phone and say, oh yeah, what is that planet I'm looking up out there, because I can see where it is. So yeah.
Yes.
And Venus having just entered Aries, it's like, yeah, I want to be part of the party too. And that Eris thing is Dan just always fond of saying, you better invite Eris to the party, else you're going to regret it. So chaos, inviting chaos instead of pretending that she doesn't exist.
Right. And Venus will cross that point too, within this lunation.
Yes.
And the nodes just did cross the point. It's just
Right.
a lot about that point. I'm gonna look up the star dust on the 360 degrees here, Elias Lonsdale. I'm gonna look up that point and really lean into what it says.
Right. Well, right. I can tell you that the one for 20 Aries and the Sabian symbols, because confession here, this is the exact degree of my moon in Aries, is a young girl feeding birds in winter. And Dane Rujara says it's about, crisis, overcoming crisis with compassion. I just think that's so beautiful for what we're facing in the world, because we don't mean to whitewash it, lightwash anything here as shamanic astrologers. We're in for it. Stuff is going on, and we don't need to tell, everybody knows that, who's paying any attention whatsoever. And I think that may be the window, the Chironic teaching, is the worse things get, the more ability, it's almost like we're forced into our hearts and to respond to that. And that is what will bring the deep change that we need to see.
Yes, and Aries is still, again, it's been kind of morphed into the warrior out there fighting against something or defending against something, I think. But it really is more of like going into like that heart is part of who the I am, right? And that center point of the self. So maybe again, digesting the wounds where we haven't done that, with the Chiron. So.
Right.
And being compassionate with ourselves as well, pointing that back to us.
And then, I'm looking at the highlights, which I've got in front of me. I didn't pull a chart for it, but because it's almost, you see, the sun is going to conjunct Chiron, right? Like 7 minutes later after this lunation. And then the moon is going to conjunct Mercury later that evening. So it's like, again, bringing it all in, it's all just being activated. Then on the next chart, if we can go to the next chart, Lizzie, for the Mars conjunct Saturn, which we talked about as far as the visibility of it, but what does it look like from the astrological chart point of view here? So they're in Pisces, again, that, that last sign, that sign of compassion, all that the grief, the expression of grief, because we've got Mars, we've got Saturn in Pisces. That's like a 2.5 year project that we're in here. And so what does that look like? The planet of structure in the sign of no boundaries, all. So again, it can be bringing structure to spirituality, really showing up, or the things that we've always been taught are really not real, seeing, wow, they're actually more real. How do we ground that? And so with Mars here, it's amplifying that energy, Mars be that actional, but again, the actional, I love how we've got Venus in Aries, so the archetype of the feminine in a yang energy, and Mars, the archetypal masculine, in a yin energy. So again, busting those societal versions of what authentic masculine and authentic feminine need or have to or want to be, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was feeling that too. Being actional, even in our spiritual practices, being actional in embodying our spiritual practice, our compassion, not maybe just sitting on our cushion, but perhaps being actional in in that I don't know. It's kind of bringing more of that actional quality to um, yeah, spiritual practices, spiritual, again, I feel like it is still an embodiment piece here. It's not just an ethereal thing with the Saturn there, you know?
Right. I was really thinking about that yesterday too. Daniel had said something in a group I was in about the spiritual will. And of course, that's a phrase we've all heard. But I was thinking about it. Yeah, sometimes when I feel like I wander all over or I don't, am I employing my spiritual will? Not just that ego will of I should be doing this or I should be, but what is the spiritual will? What is coming from my deepest spiritual sense and gathering my forces, my Saturnian Mars forces to say, okay, then I need to make this happen, in concert with spirit, but from that deep place. If I want it to unfold, yeah.
Yes.
Um, yeah. Okay. Let's see, on to the next one. I think I've got, yes, this is the sun conjunct Mercury. So the sun Mercury interior conjunction. So you can see this. So he's in that metamorphic, between us and the sun. And at 22 Aries 32, because obviously they were so close a few days before at the at the at the solar eclipse. So so you can see Chiron is still right up there. Chiron is now at 19 degrees. So Chiron is now at the degree that the eclipse was at, the new moon. So there, it's just like, wow. It's communication, the teacher, the healer, compassion, finding this deep compassion to act in the world. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
And I feel a metamorphosis kind of in the thought processes too, right? It has to also include not just the embodiment of the spiritual practice, but how are we, you know, maybe digesting what we've learned, or through the mental processes, our beliefs, our perceptions, our perspectives, is kind of clearing those. And then here we have sun kind of I don't know, I'm feeling that too. It's like, okay, I can clean up maybe even my practices, but I gotta clean up my thoughts too, right? I gotta like keep that and not allow some of the old patterns of thinking in a way, be carried forward, because that's like chironic part with Mercury as well.
right. And we can be inspired by Mercury right now because it's going through that metamorphic, that quick change. It's been all the way in this last 115 days. It's gone through all these different archetypes, and so it's got all this, and all these different ways of thinking. And now I'm just going to take all that knowledge and just sort of like almost like dissolve it, like the butterfly and the chrysalis, and metamorphoses it into something totally new, in Aries.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that it's in the sign that it's going to be in the overstory of, it's almost like, okay, I'm getting my foot in Aries here, and then to go forward. Because
Right.
Aries, it's like going, getting to the new information in a that's what communication is about. It's pulled towards new territory, to open new territory.
Right. And a thought can come in quickly and change a whole trajectory, right? It can spark something new, right? Even a new way of thinking, you know? Um,
We allow it. Okay. So I think the next one is the uh, the second quarter. Yeah. And I did want to say that just right before that, the second quarter moon is on April 15th, but on April 11th, that same day that the Sun Mercury conjunction, the moon goes out of bounds again. You know, we're in that 19-year lunar cycle where whenever the moon is near the solstice points, basically. So, you know, late Sag, early Capricorn, or late Gemini, early Cancer, which is going to do twice a month, right? So during this year and a half or so, when we're right in the middle of it, during those times, then the moon is going to be out of bounds, which means it's going to be rising or setting further north or south, way further of the ecliptic. So like if you look, you know, the planets travel along that 30 degree of the ecliptic, so they're never going to be that far from the sun on the horizon. But it really is freaky. You know, Daniel would always talk about this, but I was at Faywood with that, you know, in that beautiful stone circle where you got a 360-degree view. And I was up there one night and I was looking for the moon. I couldn't find it. And I got up there to look at the moonrise. It was really great. And because it was rising so far north that I wasn't looking, I thought the moon can't be over there. So you know, and you can imagine to the ancients who really, really lived this connection with earth and sky, how it would have meant something. I mean, you can really see how it really is this marker for time to think outside the box. Um, so, so and you'll see it's going back in bounds on the 16th, and it has its most extreme out of bounds on the 14th when it's reaching 28 north 28 north 34. So that's pretty far. I think the farthest it gets is 29 something, right? So we're really getting into that. We're getting into the major phase of that. And that's why some of us, I'm not getting to go this year, but the school is doing its yearly event in Callanish, where the moon, during this time, the moon walks on the land. So at that amazing stone circle there in Scotland. Okay, what else do we want to talk about here? Yes. So yeah, Venus conjunct the North Node. Again, Venus conjunct the North Node in Aries. I'm beginning to feel like a broken record, but you know, the sacred feminine in her Leo synodic overstory, sovereignty, radiant radical self-love is going through Aries, you know, getting a little spark of that that innocence, trust, courage, going at life as if for the first time. And she's conjunct the North Node. So again, this acceleration, this opportunity of how is it we want to put ourselves forward to go towards you know, something that's calling us in life. This is a great help for that.
Yes, and just before that, again, Mercury conjunct Chiron there at 19, and then Mercury and Venus meet.
Right.
Kind of interesting
exactly.
little part of the story.
She's catching up with them, exactly. And again, at 1820, yeah, it's all within those few degrees.
And then again, Venus now squares Ceres at that kind of same degree.
Right, exactly. And Ceres, I think Ceres can be very powerful. You know, I want to collect a book of stories. I think we all have our COVID story, you know, whether we got COVID or not, but I mean, just that whole period of whatever went on in the world at that time. And I actually was very sick. And of course, being an astrologer, you know, I had to try to figure out what is going on. And the only major transit I had going on right then was Ceres. And but it really, I learned a lot. I dived deeply into it, you know, really about that principle of how we mother, how we expect to be mothered. And what had a lot of meaning for me too was what we thought we needed to do as a child to be mothered properly. And that really, you know, that can be kind of a deep inquiry. Maybe it wasn't really even true, you know, but it was true to that child self and what patterns has that set up. So Venus, yeah, that Venus in Aries squares Aries in Capricorn. So again, you know, all on that householder cross of how do we show up? How do we take the best of the culture and continue it forward with this sparky, you know, kind of like adventure, explorer, leader Aries, you know, as you said, sort of spontaneous. And then, you know, and then Ceres and Capricorn is like, no, we're going to show up and put the you know, structures in place to support. So what is that? The conflict between those, and how can we have a creative synthesis of them?
Yeah, after we've been through the metamorphosis of how we think and you know, and those things with Mercury and Chiron.
Exactly. Go on ahead, Lizzie. I want to see. I think I might have one of these charts up there.
Yes. Venus
Yeah,
conjunct.
so this is Venus conjunct the North Node. So you can see there, yeah, exactly. With Mercury very close and Chiron. Yeah, it just continues.
Oh, and look at this. Getting
Right. Look at
close.
how close they are. Exactly, because they're going to be conjunct on the 20th, I believe. So yeah, you can see how they're just that's happening um, at the same time. Okay, the next one. And here we go.
And here we are. Good segue.
Everywhere you go, you arrive there. So Venus conjunct Uranus. You know, Daniel talked a lot about this really being, he believes, the marker of a, along with everything else that's going on, a timeline split. You know, that things won't be the same. And again, it doesn't mean that we'll wake up on April 21st and everything will be different, but
well, and for I think something this big and including Uranus, there's such a slow moving outer planet. We're already in the window of it. I mean, we already feel huge shifts. We've already spoken to that. You know, we all feel it, sense it, know it. You know, whether they're aware of it, whether we're all aware of astrology or not, we sense and feel that there's, you know, some big things happening. So I feel this, you know, already in the works.
absolutely, because they've been very close within 10 degrees for a long time now, and will continue to be even after this conjunction. And for me, again, you know, I have a lot of Taurus in my chart, and I love that Taurean archetype of really the appreciation of being here embodied on this garden planet. I know we've got a lot of problems, and you know, we're in the darkest depths of the Kali Yuga, the Dark Ages. But there's still so much to be loved and appreciated. And with Uranus and Jupiter there, it's like almost like, what are a new relationship? Like I was sitting out under the tree in my yard here the other day and thinking, you know, I've never actually seen divas, you know, like little fairy spirits but I believe they exist. And maybe this is the time in my life when they can appear.
Yeah.
So,
It's you know, and I've gotten, you know, some messages too about this because this conjunction has happened before. It's happened even in Taurus before. We've all gone back to look at it and we line it up and go, wow, those were some earth shaking years, you know, like literally perhaps. And so, you know, I feel like a collective memory is of those conjunctions only being earth shaking in a way that's destructive, you know. So I feel like perhaps, you know, we may be called again with the Mercury and the Aries, something new sprouting. Can we digest how it has been and allow Uranus to crack something, you know, like make the crack that something new comes in, a new light comes in, that it doesn't have to be destruction and earth shaking, you know, changes. It could be a break into you know, something that cracks open the heart and the ability to really, you know, enjoy pleasure again and the earthly delights. And that's, you know, what Taurus brings to us in a more expanded way, not like, oh yeah, I remember a sunset once when I went on vacation, but really, you know, being here on this earth and I don't know, in some way, you know, suddenly in an unpredictable way, right? That's Uranus, you know, but bigly, because it's Jupiter, you know, really cracking open something new. And maybe I've kind of, I guess, heard, you know, you're in the body. We need you to imagine bringing that heaven on earth and enjoying the things like you're talking about, not only imagining, you know, what we've had in our memories from these conjunctions before, these cycles before. Like we do have all this this energy to clear out old cycles and, conceive something new,
Right. And
you know.
again, I've just finished reading the Yuga Shift book by Bebu Dev Misra, and I can highly recommend it. It was supposed to be my book for the trip, and I read it last weekend. Aries, can we say Aries Mercury? But it really, granted, a perspective I already had. Of course, I'm, belong to the Turning of the Ages Mystery School, but he does all this cross-cultural research, and we really are in these massive times, and we are going through it. We're not going to wake up tomorrow and be in the golden age, but what we're doing now can seed that in ways we can't even conceive of. And I think that really speaks to, Uranus and Jupiter conjunct in Taurus really speak to that. We may not even know, we may not see it in our lifetime, but yeah, creating the cracks or the space for something new to be birthed and to continue.
Yeah, and to manifest. I mean, that's Taurus too, like to manifest on the earth,
Right.
being real.
Okay.
Oh, that we enjoy. We have to add that part in. The Taurian part, that we enjoy this time.
Absolutely. Okay, let's see. What do we got coming up next here? Yeah, so the third quarter that begins with the Scorpio full moon on April 23rd. Oh, so yeah, why don't you go to the next one because that's going to be the full moon chart so we can talk. Oh no, it's not the full moon chart.
Let me see. Do we have it?
You know
No.
what? I think I might not, it might not have gotten in there.
Okay, so let me.
I'm
You
sorry.
go ahead and speak on it, and I'll see if I can pull something up here.
Oh, bless you, my child. Um, So the Scorpio, yeah, Scorpio full moon, obviously Scorpio Taurus again, because a full moon, by definition, the moon is opposing the sun. So the moon is in Scorpio and the sun is in Taurus. So it's echoing that, the energy that's happening in Taurus with the Uranus Jupiter conjunction. But it's at early degrees. And so that, Scorpio full moon is just feeling the depths of life and feeling the feelings and going deeply into it. No holes bared, not a lot of intellectualization happening there. It's like, how can we experience that most primal force energy?
Here we go. I'm going to take a
Look at you.
look at it
Thank
real
you, Christine.
quick.
Thank you. Yeah, so here we go. Again, it's interesting that sun, the sun in that chart is sort of bridging all the stuff happening in Aries and then the conjunction over there in Taurus, right? We've still got all that whole lineup in Aries of the North Node, Mercury, Chiron, Venus, and Mars still very close to Saturn with Neptune there. We didn't talk about that earlier, but yeah, that adds to, it's almost like, that, so Saturn is in Pisces for 2.5 years, as we talked about. But then Mars there is kind of, amplifying the Saturnian part of it. How do we show up? How do we do something? How are we actional? And then Neptune, of course, it's the sign, Pisces is the sign it's most resonant with. So it's like that whole combination of Earthed and Pisces on steroids.
Adding a spiritual quality to it all.
Definitely.
Okay, I'll go back to the other charts here. There we go.
And I didn't do charts for them, but again, because all these planets we've now got Ceres squaring Chiron because Venus was squaring it earlier, and they're kind of together there in Aries. So again, bringing in that Ceres energy in Capricorn, showing up. with structures, you know, like the as we talk about in the school a lot, with Capricorn being the circle of 13 grandmothers, you know, supporting us, not that old guy with the beard, which is kind of the patriarchal Saturn, but really the earth beneath our feet. Um, Everything comes from the magic of that grain growing something, right? If you think of, I mean, it's just, it's magic. And Ceres it's the root word of cereal. Um, so that's where that comes from, the Greek. You know, she was the great grain goddess.
Mhm.
Yeah, scoring Chiron. So again, what what are we learning about the mistakes of the past and that to go forward? And then on the 27th, Venus enters the underworld. That chart is there. So again, Venus in her Leo synodic overstory cycle. It's gone down through the gates. We're in just before this lunation, we'll be entering that eighth gate, death by intent. And now she will be in the underworld on the other side of the sun from us, so invisible to us. In the story of Inanna, it's when she goes into the underworld, you know, and is killed and hung on the meat hook to rot. Very scorpionic part of the and she's in Aries. So that's so interesting. So she's the Aries pioneer, because, you know, Inanna chose this journey, like, you know, and so that, and at this death by intent gate, who would be more likely to just spark up there and say, yeah, sure, death by intent, I'll go for it? Aries. And she's almost conjunct Eris there. Yeah, she's close to Eris. Again, Chiron not too far away. So it really is a deep time. I think everybody's feeling this. I mean, I mean, everybody I've talked to, it's on the one hand, there is all this energy going forward. It is a time, and I've read that in a lot of things you read online about, you know, the lunations and what, you know, it's like, yeah, there's all this electrical energy and I think we really have to honor that some part of ourselves is going to the underworld, and letting go and composting what needs to be composted in that. It's not either or, and it really, there is no blueprint of how to negotiate that.
Yeah. As you said, something you just mentioned, and there's Chiron again. It's like, yeah, Chiron's like involved a lot here, you know, and then, you know, on the bigger scale, you know, we're talking about Pluto and Aquarius and all this. So it's like, what has to be digested from the past? You know, the wounding of the past, and we're all carrying it individually and collectively. So I don't know, Chiron being involved so, you know, so much in the forefront of these things seems like it's preparing us maybe to, you know, allow to be composted what, you know, we didn't, you know, what we have digested, what we've learned, what, you know.
Right, because Chiron is also that, you know, having compassion for yourself, having compassion for the mistakes we've made.
Yeah.
And I can see here, actually I didn't mention, but that on the just before the Scorpio full moon, Sun was squaring Pluto. You can see here on this chart that it's the Sun is just a little bit past that now. So, you know, that only the Pluto, you know, if the Sun is conjunct Pluto and then square and then opposite and square, so that although that just happens, you know, it's only every quarter of a year or so. So, and again, it's at it squared it at 2 degrees Taurus, where Pluto is there, 0204. So, yeah, early degrees of Taurus.
Okay.
Okay. Well, before that, actually, let's go back to the, oh no, this is it. Yeah, here we go.
The third or the fourth quarter?
I always want to be sure I got everything here. Venus is ingressing into Taurus, and Mars is entering Aries. So, you know, they're both changing signs in this whole lineup that we're talking about. So Mars going from Pisces into Aries, and then Venus is going from Aries into Taurus. Again, the moon at extreme out of bounds on the 28th, and this time it's the south declination. So that means if you go, it's going to be rising and setting way far south of where the sun would be. Whereas the one earlier in the month was would have been north looking. And the moon conjunct Pluto, that happens every month, but and then Venus squaring Pluto. So again, we got this whole Pluto thing going in there. Again, at 02 Taurus 06. So
it's almost like Pluto's just sitting down there going, hey, when you're done with Chiron.
yeah. So this is definitely just not this time of love and light. I mean, it's the one time like Aries, get on with it, North Node activating thing, and yet, boy, to do that, you're gonna have to clear out everything that's standing in the way.
So it's like, thank goodness we still have all these points in Pisces too, right? Remembering the compassion and being actional on, I don't know, I feel like all the things we've learned and tried to do in our modalities along the way. It's like, it's on now. Like, sit, meditate, breathe, read, whatever it is. Now's the time, and maybe that's the actional part of Mars being there for us as we're digesting and clearing out.
Right. Okay, then we've got the fourth quarter moon in Aquarius, squaring the sun in Taurus. And yeah, see, I usually do charts for all those and I didn't. I do apologize, but I can add them to these resources before I post it up. And then Pluto is stationed in retrograde. Okay, so again, it's at 2 Aquarius 06. And so Aquarius, it's it's going to go backwards back, and it's going to just hit back into Capricorn again, and that'll be its last pass through Capricorn until it's Aquarius, full speed for the 12, 14 years. So again, planets when they're going to retrograde are moving slower, so they almost come to a stop. So he's been at these 026, 0205, 02, like the same degree for like days, weeks. It's like really delving deeply into that. And again, Daniel's talked a lot about the shadow of Aquarius, and certainly Pluto in Aquarius is asking us, is giving us the opportunity to experience that. Because you'll hear a lot in the outside world about the light of Aquarius, and we're all just going to be collaboration and everything's going to be great. And the shadow side of that, all the archetypes have their shadow side. And the shadow side is, of course, the one mind, the hive mind. What is it, the Borg? The Borg say, you will be assimilated.
Yes. And,
Resistance.
it's kind of slippery words there, will all become one, right? And to me, I feel like, especially we've been talking about this Aries energy of, like the I am, who am I in this, right? And I'm a yellow flower. I'm doing, whatever it is. That perhaps I feel like more the moving into the Aquarian age is more like, yeah, it's about being completely individuated, like knowing exactly who you are. Your unique self is. It's also very unique and eccentric. How can you be unique and eccentric and in the hive? So, it's really about knowing from this higher consciousness that who I am completely and individually, uniquely myself, so that I know if you're doing that and I'm doing that and she's doing that and he's doing that and we're all doing that, that actually fosters the trust, not the well, we must all be doing it because we said we were part of the club, but we're doing it because we're very individuated and strong in that I am, that now we can trust each other enough to go forward together, right? Not out of an illusion or a wounding or a trauma response or any of that. So I feel like that's more of the Aquarian time. And yes, if we can do that, it would be, pixie dust and unicorns everywhere.
Will be someday. And it goes back to when we were speaking about the polarity of Aries Libra. It's, what is the polarity sign of Aquarius? Leo. Radiant, radical self-love, sovereignty, the creator on the wheel, making it up as we go along. And so we always need the balance of the opposite sign.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you can see Moon is going to, be conjuncting Saturn, Neptune, Mars, kind of, and the Moon passes all these every month, right? But it's just a way of highlighting that energy and saying, yes, can be aware of this, an opportunity for calling that in and into it, and calling the gifts of it in. Then the Mercury conjunct Chiron. So again, all those planets in Aries there at 21 Aries, just a couple degrees from where the eclipse was on the 6th. And then we get to the Taurus new moon. Okay, I think if we go one more.
Oh, yeah, we have a chart here for Pluto stationing retrograde.
Okay. See right there. And again, ignore the name. And so, it's really kind of, you see it's kind of it's squaring that the sun there.
Mm-hmm.
We're in those planets in Taurus. And Venus has entered into
Venus, yeah, that's what I was
so
looking.
it's really, because remember we said that they were in that square, so you can see that's really definitely. So Venus in her underworld thing is now entering into Taurus, into that sign of deep presence and receivership, and with Pluto there squaring it, yeah, it's an acceleration of that underworld process of really what ways have I not felt safe in the world to experience what, I was thinking that the other day. Do I really feel safe? Do I really enjoy the world? Do I really think the world is an okay, safe place? I mean, with all my Aries in this, yes, I'm a born optimist, but in this deeper, deeper place of going and shedding those layers in the world.
Also, I feel like safety in the body, right? And so many have, I mean, this is collective and individual, but that literally kind of rug been pulled out from under us, in a way, always telling us we should be afraid and your body's going to somehow, go defunct and, something's going to happen to you all the time, and so there's that safety piece in our bodies as well that Taurus.
Absolutely. And the denigration of our sensuality and our sexuality, and which is basic. It's basic to who we are, and yet it's been so warped over the last many thousand years. So yeah, opportunity for some healing around that for sure.
Because that's empowerment in the end, right? The Pluto empowerment in the end. Right.
Okay. I think we have the US chart. Right there we are, yes. Okay. So you can see that the south node of the US chart is at 06 Aquarius 35. I don't know if that sounds familiar, but that's where Saturn's hanging out right now. So again, if we're looking at the south and the north node as a past future trajectory, and whenever anything is hitting one end of the nodes, it's always activating the whole thing. But if it's on the south node, it's an emphasis on the past. And with Saturn there, it's like, yeah, what habits, what ways of being, what structures, what's not working. And I think we all have a lot of things we could throw in the pot for that for our country, so that we can go towards that north node towards that sovereignty. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. With an open heart. That's Leo as well too. Big heart.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Then you also notice, of course, that the US Chiron is at 20 degrees Aries. Again, sound familiar? So, wow. What an opportunity. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. I have no sense what is happening in this country and what is going to happen. And, but there's an opportunity to really shake something loose and go in a new direction.
Absolutely. And I think I heard along the way that the US is in its fifth Chiron return at this time.
That
You know,
sounds, that
and
would, yeah.
numerology, 5 is a shake-up number, so right, so we did,
Mhm.
but, you look at the other 4, I think it was asked, "Well, we've had this opportunity before, how did we do?" You know? So, but, it's always the cycles keep turning, and hopefully it's moving toward, our just like personally, our evolution, and maybe, we're getting closer to being able to digest some of those wounds and go forward into our truth, our Sag rising. Look at this, like the truth,
Right.
not all the deception and corruption, perhaps, of the last cycles.
And again, not to, in talking about those larger cycles, that Kali Yuga, according to Bebu Dave Misra, and I found out about him through Daniel several years back. He did all this work to sort of try to codify, to say how do you mark these cycles and when are they ending? And according to him, the Kali Yuga is ending in 2025. So we're right there. So um, that means, those smaller cycles, like 5 Chiron returns, for instance, of the US, are operating within these larger, it's like the cogs within the cogs. And yeah, we're deeper into it. And now we're coming. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're just going up into a golden age, but I do believe that we're in the crux of it now and that something is going to be different. Even if it's only, I remember years ago reading this, so resonated with me. It was almost like a dream. It's like, imagine if you woke up in the morning and everything you did was contributing towards, we were in a place where, yes, things were still messed up and the environment was messed up and all this bad stuff was happening, but we were going in a direction. We knew that everything we did was going towards healing and towards evolving something new. What would that feel like? You know, yeah,
Yes. Well, here we go. I mean, where have we not been doing that with our Chiron? And, our Jupiter is Cancer, right? And Mercury, it's, that nourishing, you know, aspect of the mothering aspect. Like, where is that? How can we expand and amplify that?
right.
Um,
And
get to that even.
and of course, the shadow of that is, you know, mothering. The shadow of Cancer is, not being able to find yourself outside of that, not letting go of a child when it grows to its own maturity, like thinking best, almost like, being the smothering mother. You can see in some ways of our foreign policy has sort of, partaken of that. But yes, there's this, again, that is our destiny, again, going back towards what was our original blueprint. This was it, our moment of and Daniel talks about sometimes, some people believe that it was kind of engineered. The founding fathers decided on this, it was kind of like they knew about this stuff, right? And so it was kind of saying, yeah.
Yeah. And maybe I'll ask you, would another aspect of a shadow side of Cancer be, will you take care of me too? Meaning, well, the government, the system, the whatever's just going to take care of me, instead of, I mean, I don't know,
Right.
maybe.
That can be a Cancerian shadow, like if in a personal chart, if you have a Cancer moon. I've heard Daniel talk about this. It can be, it's like you have this sense of you want to take care of everything, and it feels so overwhelming that you just abandon the baby on the trail. It's like almost too much. Like I can't
Yeah.
step into it because, yeah.
Ah, okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of related to that in a way because, yeah, turning it over. Um, and not being, and again, going back to all that Aries Leo we were talking about, the shadow of Cancer is not being able to define yourself outside of your role as a nurturer, like having no there, you know. So
Okay.
definitely in this chart going towards Sag rising.
Hmm. Interesting.
And Gemini Mars, of course, That's what you're talking about in some ways too. Gemini Mars, the shadow of that would be never wanting to grow up, never wanting to take responsibility.
Right. We need to balance out some of that, don't we?
Yes. Okay, and then I think the last chart should be the Taurus new moon.
Hmm.
Yes, indeed. So this ends the lunation on the 7th. And again, so we've got the sun and the moon in 18 Taurus, which is, that's not that far from where were Jupiter and
20, right?
yeah, 21 Taurus. So yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of an echo of that, right? You know, with that the continued anchoring and then in the unfolding of whatever that portends to be, because you know, obviously Uranus and Jupiter are still up there and Venus is there. So, you know, it's like last month, the month before, we had all that Pisces and a lot of these planets moving into Aries, and now next month we're going from that. It'll be the same, you know, signs right next to each other. It's not like a polarity, it's not like an opposite, they're disconjuncts. They don't even have a common language. And so how do you make a container that holds both of those? And right now, if we talked a lot on this call, we're in that Aries Pisces conundrum, and we're going to be moving next month into the Aries Taurus, you know,
Yeah.
version.
It's so interesting. It is like a story still being told. You know, there's still this Pisces here. There's still a lot in Aries, Mars, you know, in Aries by then. And it's like, in some ways, like, some Taurus. I don't know. Whatever that means. I don't know if those are words to that, but it feels like maybe some comfort or ease. I don't know. Oh,
And you know, Taurus in the northern hemisphere, you know, it is looking at it as a seasonal sign, is really that time of it's not quite full summer, but it's not just that crazy spring where everything's so volatile. You're starting to get into, oh, you just, yeah, you can kind of take a deep breath. And you know, and here in the south where I've never lived here before, it's just so green, you know, so the greenness is just like a, oh, you know, yeah. It, yeah, I always think of Ferdinand the Bull, you know, my favorite Taurian archetype, you know, that they wanted to make him you know, go in the ring with the bullfighters, and he just wanted to sit and smell the roses, you know.
yeah. Yeah. Nice. So good. There's
All the changes that we're going through, and you referenced this earlier, but it really is important to listen to our bodies, you know, and the wisdom of them, be kind to them, because we're going through a lot. And you know, the electromagnetic energies, all these things are measured now. It's just off the charts, you know. It's just, we're going through the change. It's not some intellectual human thing. The earth is going through a part of the cosmos that's bringing up all this change, and we're learning how to calibrate our bodies to it, so giving ourselves the support we need in that.
absolutely times they are a changing. Mhm.
Thank you very much, Lizzie, and thank you everyone who was here, or who, you know, who listens to it on the call. Nobody's here. I feel the audience. I feel you. Do you feel that?
Yes, yes, like we're already talking, although there weren't any comments but ours.
Yes,
So,
I do miss having the live audience, but and
mhm.
Daniel will be back next month, and so we'll be
Yeah, so you will be in Ohio, so have a wonderful time with the group and a gathering, and I will be here holding the ground, the whatever energy here in Arizona. But you know, I'm going to be also in kind of ceremony when I know that you are as well. So we'll still all be connected.
I know you will. I'll feel that. And yes, you know, I came from the Southwest, so I'm, I miss the night sky. I miss the night sky being here. So I'm glad that you're holding that space there for us.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for this call. I enjoyed doing that and going through the lunation with you. Good job, Sylvia. All right. See you next.